Now I'm going to introduce Mr. Dennis Dawson. Woohoo!
Hooray for me. And yes, just like in kindergarten, if anybody starts to clap, everybody has to clap for 3 seconds, right? We don't want the slow clap from the 80s. So it's excellent. Okay. And we got spotlighted, but I want to see everybody. So give me just a second here. Back to gallery. There we all are. Hello. Yes, I've been in Toastmasters a mere 14 years, so I'm just a child compared to many of you people here. I am a 2-time distinguished Toastmaster, a past district governor. I have won the district humorist contest, the district tall tales contest, and the district evaluation contest, which is apropos for this evening. I only mention this because I have an ego slightly larger than Calgary. This evening, we are going to walk through the basic Evaluate to Motivate presentation that comes from Toastmasters International. And then I understand, Marge, you've got 2 speakers for me tonight, and I will evaluate those 2 speakers. I won't be able to put together a typical evaluation speech because I would need that 5 minutes after they are done speaking, and I'm not going to wait for that. But what I will do is walk you through my thought process for how I create the evaluation, and we can have a discussion along that line. Does that sound good? And every place I get it wrong, Max and Carolyn, they're going to correct me. I'll be looking to Joan, who's been in Toastmasters just as long as I have, to fill in. This is going to be a conversation when we get to that point. There will be time for questions, and there will be answers. They won't necessarily come from me. They may come from deep inside you, from inside your heart, or from one of the other people on this Zoom call tonight. So let us share my screen here. Share screen, Google Chrome. And right now you should be seeing Evaluate to Motivate. And let me get all of my windows back where they belong. There now. So, why do we do evaluations in Toastmasters? Now, it is not just for the benefit of the person who's receiving the feedback, although it's wonderful for them to get immediate feedback. Think about how it is on your job. You're lucky if you get evaluated every 6 months. Some companies only give you a once-a-year evaluation. This is an opportunity for your boss to come in with a big old sack of feedback and dump it over your head all at once. And you think you've been doing a fantastic job all year, but they say that you would have been doing so much better if you didn't say you know and I've been counting your you knows and ums over the course of the past year. You had 16,423 you knows, 4,500 uhs, 6.8 thousand you knows. Anyway, so we don't save all of our feedback for once a year and then dump it on people. In Toastmasters, we give you immediate feedback that same day so that it's something you can use to learn on, something you can then use the following week in Toastmasters. So the immediate feedback is nice. We give some suggestions for improvement. Now, there are no experts in Toastmasters. We have no professors. We have no teachers. Toastmasters is a self-education organization. When you get an evaluation, what you're hearing is a peer's opinion of your speech. All I can tell you is what I saw, what I heard, and what I felt while you were speaking. I can't tell you how to do it better. I can't tell you what you did wrong. What I can tell you is what I have experienced in the past, what people have suggested to me, changes that I've made, and the effect that it had on my personal speaking experience. And when you get that evaluation from a whole bunch of different people, You put it all together, and that is what informs your Toastmasters experience. That's why it's important to get a variety of people reviewing your speeches. As I said, I'm a 2-time DTM. I'm a really good speaker. I can get up and talk in front of people, no problem. In fact, it was never a problem for me to get up and speak. What Toastmasters taught me was to sit down and shut up. When I wrote my first icebreaker speech, having no idea how long a speech was, it wasn't tidy little 4 pages. I practiced it. It took 13 minutes. That's when someone explained to me that a 5-minute speech is 10-point courier, 1-inch margins, single space, 1 page, cutting it down to 625 words. That was hard because I've had a very long life. I was able to do it though, and able to get through the icebreaker. And Toastmasters has been teaching me to sit down and shut up ever since. All of that said, I had to learn that for myself based on tips and suggestions from other people as I got going. The important part of a evaluation, of course, is to make sure that you make people feel good about what they've done, even as you're giving them good, solid feedback on how they can improve. And we're going to talk more about that later in the presentation. Now, for Toastmasters, if you want to evaluate somebody really well, the first thing you do is talk with them about their speech before the meeting. So find out which pathways lesson they're using. And if they're not using a pathways lesson, find out which pathways lesson they should be using, download that evaluation form, and give them the evaluation for the pathways lesson they should be doing. It irks me at this point, anybody who is not actually invested in pathways. Pathways is Toastmasters. Toastmasters is Pathways. We are not a social organization like the Moose Lodge. We are not a service organization like the Rotary Club. We are an educational organization, and the materials we use are called the Pathways program. I understand that some of you may be DTMs. You've been in the organization for a long time. Some of you use the manuals and you loved the manuals. You really miss them, and you really are not too excited about getting to the online materials. However, all of the new people coming in to Toastmasters are people who have never seen those old manuals. They've never seen those materials. And so all that they have is Pathways. And for all the new members, people who have been in the organization for less than 4 years, Pathways is Toastmasters. So we want to be sure that everyone is invested in the lessons. It's those lessons that give us criteria, not only to build the speech, but the criteria we can use to evaluate the speech. It's really not fair to your evaluator if you come in and say, oh, I'm just going to give any old speech, you just give me any old feedback. That's unfair to the evaluator. Remember, we're all trying to learn here. The speaker learns from receiving the evaluation, but the evaluator learns from giving the evaluation. And everybody in the room learns by hearing a great speech and hearing a great evaluation. And that only works if you've used a Pathways lesson so that everyone can follow along and everybody can chart their educational goals. Based on those guidelines, then you're able to figure out exactly what you should be watching for in this particular speech. Yes, in general, you're going to see how well they deliver the speech, but you might be focused in particular on their body language this time, or their vocal variety. You might be focused on how they've constructed the speech and whether they've researched it properly. All of that's going to be informed by understanding the Pathways lesson. Then beyond that, ask them what other concerns they have. What else would they like for you to be watching for? A lot of times I work with people for whom English isn't their first language, and they're asking me to look into things about their grammar, ways that they could express themselves more clearly. Are they enunciating properly? All of these are helpful things to know as you're watching for the specific guidelines that come from the lesson. During the speech, first thing, show that you're interested. And this is where I get into conflict with that bullet and the third one, taking notes. I am one of those people that really likes to be heads down and taking the notes the whole time. And someone's giving a hilarious speech, everybody's laughing, not me. I'm writing down, that was really funny. So I have to remember every now and again to look up and actually laugh at the jokes, to actually experience the speech and not just sit here and critique it. So that's sort of the difference in an evaluation. You're not just there to be a critic, you're there to be someone who is sharing the experience of the speech with the entire club so that you can reflect the experience of the people. Not only do you want to put yourself in the position of the rest of the audience, you want to put yourself in the position of the speaker. Think about the experience that they're going through as they deliver the speech and how you might do it differently if you were that speaker, or things that you emulate in that speaker and you would like to do yourself in the future. These are all great specifics that you can bring up when you're delivering your evaluation. Now it's time to actually deliver the evaluation. When you do, you want to choose words carefully. I actually am a professional writer. I can choose my words very carefully, and that doesn't mean I'm always as kind as I should be. I'm not. That's something I have to work on in Toastmasters. And Carol's laughing because she knows that I have a tendency to be very direct in my feedback. However, and we'll get into this in a minute, being too direct is actually better than not being direct at all. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But when I do my evaluations, I am very careful to use I language. I saw, I heard, I felt. It's not, you spoke too softly. It's, I had trouble hearing you at times. It's not, you should move around the stage more. It's, I find that when I'm trying to emphasize a point, I can walk toward the camera and raise my fist, or something that works for me when I feel nervous, I make fists with my toes. By making fists with my toes, I'm putting all of the energy down in my feet and my upper body looks more relaxed. Now, I'm not telling you what you should do. I'm saying what works for me. It might not work for you, but you can never be wrong if you're using I language. You're talking about yourself and your experience. Nobody can argue with that. Once you tell somebody you should do something, that's when it all becomes very controversial, and they have every right to object to you telling them how they should speak. You want to be sure that you're evaluating the speech you see today and not that person in general. You're not evaluating every speech they've ever given. This is especially important for DTMs. When I get up and give a speech, I want you to evaluate how I'm doing now. Why? Because I have come to Toastmasters to improve my public speaking and leadership skills. Now, you know the saying from Malcolm Gladwell, thank you. Malcolm Gladwell says that when you put 10,000 hours into anything, you become an expert at that. Well, at first, your trajectory is very sharp as you go through that first 1,000 hours. You get very good very quickly. The next 9,000 hours, you're going to very gradually improve over time. And that's what everyone needs to understand. I need that feedback if I'm ever going to get better as a Toastmaster. So I need you to look at the speech I gave today and don't say, oh, Dennis, you're always so good. I'm going to give you a pass on the fact that you obviously didn't rehearse your speech enough because you did forget it halfway through and you actually fell off of the dais and did a complete face plant. I don't think you planned that today, but you're so good. Yeah. No, I want you to evaluate exactly how I did today. And the same is true when you watch a speaker. Maybe it's their third speech, maybe it's their fourth speech, and they've always had a problem with their body language. They've always had a problem with saying, you know, and you're watching the speech today, holy cow. I just noticed there were no filler words in that speech. Astounding. I'm not going to base my comments on things that you've done wrong in the past because you have actually improved on that. I'm going to make a special note of how much you have improved in that area as I deliver your evaluation today. Because the most important thing is to make people feel good about their experience, even when their speech is terrible. We have one particular person in my Sunnyvale club. He English is not his first language, and he has a terrible stutter. every time he gets up to speak, it's an amazing uh, act of bravery that he does it. But it's essential to his career because he's in management in software. He has to get up and speak in front of his team once a week and encourage other people to speak as well. So it is grueling for him, and it's grueling for us as the audience. And yet we find something to praise every time he gets up there. And his progress has been amazing over time as we give him real feedback to help him grow. At the same time, we give him the support he needs to keep coming back week after week. If you find that you've got someone who just stops coming to your club, you want to think about the way that person was evaluated. Were they given enough opportunities to speak? And if they were given enough opportunities, were they given the encouragement to speak often enough to receive that feedback and gain the benefits of Toastmasters? Sometimes we think, well, you know, it's a self-paced organization. We'll just let people speak when they want to. That's a big mistake. Everybody should be getting up and speaking on a regular basis at a regular clip. Otherwise, it's like they bought a ticket to go on the merry-go-round and they sat on the bench and watched it spin. No, you want everybody up on the horse. All right. Now, honest evaluations are upbeat and encouraging while offering suggestions for improvement. Upbeat, encouraging, while offering suggestions for improvement. This is the clincher here. I recently came across this book, Radical Candor by Kim Scott. This is a must read for everybody, but I'm going to give you a little synopsis here. She has this radical candor compass. Left to right, it's going from being silent and not saying anything on a continuum to challenging directly about things. At the base, now she puts the symbol for a curse word down there versus at the top, caring deeply. But I happen to know the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is apathy, because love and hate are a very thin line separating them, right? You're passionate one way or the other. But if you absolutely don't care about somebody, that's probably the worst thing that you can do. The worst way you can treat a person is just not to care. And that's what happens. If you challenge people directly, but you don't care about them, then that's called obnoxious aggression. That's where you're coming in here, you're going, oh, that was a terrible speech. You should know better than that. I don't know why you waste our time here in Toastmasters. Okay, you're not being helpful at that point. However, if you start talking about, you have a very annoying habit with the way you tick your tongue in between sentences. It's annoying. You need to stop going. All right, now that's obnoxious, it's aggressive, and it's useful feedback. Because if they are going between every sentence, that's never going to fly in a professional organization. That's why I say obnoxious aggression is bad, but it's not as bad as insincere manipulation. That's where you say, how was my speech today? Oh, it was good. It was good. Any way I could improve? No, I can't think of anything that you could have done better. It was fine. It was fine. You're fine. Okay. Utterly unhelpful. Or you can blow smoke at them out there. Now, the worst thing, and this is what most Toastmasters do, and I'm sorry, I'm going to be a little prejudicial here. I think that Canadians tend to be nice. And that's where you get into ruinous empathy. That's where he's, oh, that was so good. I really enjoyed everything you said. Oh, those slides of your trip to the desert where we saw one rodent after another. I have never seen so many rodents in a slideshow before. It was the best. Your gestures were the best. Your vocal variety, although you were monotonous the entire way through, I think it matched the monotony of the pictures you showed us. And that's what made it so good. Okay. Anytime you're sitting there and you're talking with empty superlatives about how wonderful the speech is, this was great, this was great, that was great, that was great, all you're doing is wasting the person's time, because what they want to know is, how can I be better? If I did something well, what specifically did I do well? And why should I do that again in the future? And if I did something poorly, what specifically was wrong with it? How did that impact the way I came across to the audience? How can I do better in the future? Now, if you are willing to challenge directly, but you show them that you really care about them, that's where you get to radical candor. And in fact, she has changed that term in her latest book, latest revision of the book, I should say, to compassionate candor. This is what we need to offer in Toastmasters. We are a safe place where people can come and fail. It's not a place where we expect everybody to do a perfect job every single time. In fact, we want people to go outside of their comfort zone, because all growth is achieved outside of one's comfort zone. Just at the edge, just past the edge of the envelope, is where you're going to find a growth opportunity. So we want people to try things and fail. Goodness knows I fail all the time as I try new stuff. But then again, I come across some amazing new things with the Zoom backgrounds and the video and all the crazy stuff we can do in the Zoom environment now. I've had a great deal of fun, sometimes hitting it out of the park and sometimes getting the ball right between the eyes. But having fun and experimenting like that is something we can safely do in Toastmasters. Always keep in mind that we are not preparing to talk to 10 people in the back of a Denny's in this organization. We're preparing people to talk to 3,000 people at a TED Talk. When we prepare our speeches, we should be preparing for that opportunity. And when other people give speeches, we should be preparing them so that when the opportunity arises, they can get up at that professional conference. They can go on the TED stage. They can go on national radio and do the presentation that they were meant to do. Their presentation that could save people's lives, that could turn people around, could give them an idea about a career that they had never thought of, to take them from the depths of insanity and turn their life around so that they then become an active member of society. The speeches we give in Toastmasters can change lives. And so we are preparing people to be the people that go out and change lives. And if you're going to do that, you can only do it by giving sincere feedback about how well people are doing and areas that they can improve their speeches in the future. When you close your speech, it's a great idea to connect to your opening statement. There, that's just a nice thing to bookend. You start the speech by saying, "What a whirlwind tour you took us on as you showed us your slides of your cruise. I enjoyed how we started off in France, etc. Blah, 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 blah. And then at the end, I am looking forward to another tour with you in the future. Thanks so much. Bing, bang." So you've got the bookends to your evaluation. That's especially important if you're in a evaluation contest. In the evaluation contest, you aren't just giving the evaluation, you're actually doing a performance and giving a speech. You can put those bookends on. It's just a nice way to tie it up for the judges, and they'll love you for it. Quick trick how to do that: when you sit down to write your notes for your evaluation at the contest, write the conclusion first, then write your introduction, then write down 2 things to improve, 1, maybe 2 things, 2 things they did well, 1, maybe 2 things to improve, and then the best thing they did in their speech. And if you prepare that way, then you start with your bookends. Now you've got your nice speech. You've got exactly the points that you want to talk about. Then, when it comes time to do your conclusion, you summarize those key points. That's important to do in a club evaluation, but when you're in a contest, that counts for 15 points on the ballot. So if you give a perfect evaluation and you don't say at the end, in conclusion, and summarize your main points, your A plus becomes a B minus. That point, you've lost 15 points, you're down to 85. So always say in summary or in conclusion and reiterate the main points of your evaluation. If you can all the way through talk about your own experience and how that informs what you're the feedback that you're giving this particular person, that's always easier for them to take. People always appreciate to know that you have gone through the same struggle, you were able to find a solution to it, and it worked for you, even if it doesn't work for them. You also want to encourage them outside of the meeting to listen to what you have said, to try to implement something or find their own solution to it so that the next time they speak, you can be looking on other areas for improvement. Most importantly, evaluation is the heart of Toastmasters. This is how we show people we care, and it's core to the educational program. So if you're giving effective evaluations, then you're helping people to get the most out of Toastmasters, and you yourself will get the most out of the Toastmasters experience. So that's the Toastmasters spiel on how to give effective evaluations. And now I want to walk through an evaluation with you. I'm going to use my evaluation format that I use for contests. And I'm going to have to turn off my camera here. I'm sorry, not my camera, but my background, which means you're going to see the skeletons in my closet. But I know you can't see my paper unless I do this. Okay. There we go. Now I'm going to split my page with a line down the middle and divide it into 3 sections with 2 horizontal lines. At the top, I make a plus sign and a minus sign. Then I draw an eye, an ear, and a hand. This is what I saw, what I heard, and what I felt. And as I take notes, I'm going to put down the positive things I saw, the positive things I heard, the positive things that I felt while you were speaking. And then in the minus column, any areas for improvement in the what I saw, areas of improvement for what I heard, areas of improvement for what I felt. Then I can look at the form at the end and I'll just put numbers next to the points that I want to make in a particular order to create a flow to the evaluation, starting with 2 things that I thought were particularly good, 1, maybe 2 things that could be even better, and then the thing that I like best is what I'll end my evaluation with. So you might try that yourself, plus minus, divide it into 6 squares, what you saw, what you heard, and what you felt. And see how your notes compare to mine as we listen to our speakers. So, Margaret?
Thank you, Dennis, for a very informative session. We are now going to call on our speaker. Brittany Matiko is doing the second speech in her pathway, and I didn't remember the name of her pathway, but it's the evaluate, give a speech, hear the evaluation, and then improve. So it's the evaluation form, the first resource in the first level. Brittany's speech is called Thankful or Grateful. Thankful or Grateful. Brittany has, as she introduced, has only been a Toastmaster for a year and a half. Well, it's coming up, a year and a half, and she's completed 2 levels already. She's the first one in our club to have completed 2 levels. So this is her speech on thankful or grateful? Brittany Matiko. Woohoo.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. American author Zig Ziglar said, "Gratitude is the healthiest human emotion of all." But what is gratitude? It's often used interchangeably with thankfulness. But is it exactly the same? Life coach Laura Michelle Gray compares gratitude with thankfulness and says thankfulness is being happy when you are given more, and gratitude is knowing that what you already have is enough. Thankfulness is fleeting. It is a passing moment, while gratitude is a state of being. We must be thankful, but it is even more important to be grateful. Sometimes it's very difficult to be grateful. You turn on the television and you see all the negative things that are taking place in our world. Not only that, but we're separated currently from our families, unable to talk with them, except with this screen in front of us. And to make matters worse, if you are from Wetaskiwin, it's basically a freezer outside. So it makes it feel like it's difficult to be grateful when things just aren't going positively. So what are some ways that we can be more grateful? Tools to help us to remember that gratitude is important. One of the ways that we can do that is to have a gratitude journal. To take a moment each day and just write down what we are grateful for. And not just writing down a list saying my family, friends, job, but to become more personal. Be descriptive about why we are thankful. When we write what we're grateful for, we should describe, I am grateful for my family because X, Y, Z. And as we become more aware of what we are grateful for, the more grateful we become. A second tool that we can use to become more grateful is to appreciate what we already have. I am guilty of going on social media and looking at my friends' profiles and seeing all the wonderful things that they are doing in their lives. And one by one, I start to compare myself to where they are, what they have accomplished. But we shouldn't compare ourselves to others. Their story, it's not our story. It's not my story. We should celebrate with them their successes, as well as celebrate our own successes. Their path is not our path. And when we realize that, we become a little more grateful. The third truth to becoming more grateful is to think outside ourselves. I have a friend. His name is James. And he grew up in Sudan during the war then. He spent his childhood walking across Sudan as a lost boy, running from genocide. Eventually, years later, he came to Canada as a refugee and built his life up. He got married, and then 2 months ago, he had a little boy. 2 weeks ago, I got the news that my friend James has cancer and only weeks to live. And when I heard that news, I realized that the petty little things in my life that I am feeling negative about are nothing. Here is a man who is, life is just tragic, yet he's more grateful in life than I am. When we look outside our lives and ourself, we view things from other people's perspective, and we see just how positive our lives really are. And when we view our lives more positive, we can take that atmosphere and help people who actually need help, like my friend James. It's important to be grateful every day, to build upon that fleeting feeling of thankfulness. And I challenge you to use these tools today to make yourself just a little more grateful and to turn your thankfulness into gratefulness. Back to you, Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Brittany. We are now going to turn the lectern over to Dennis Dawson to help us as he walks through how he facilitates your evaluation of your speech. Dennis.
Wonderful. So I would start with your wonderful vocal variety in the speech. No, I take that back. I would not start there. I would not start there. I'm going to come to that second. See, that was a little tip there, and I'll show you why. Because visually, I thought that you were really nicely framed in your screen. Very effective communication in the Zoom world. I loved your gestures, like, except with this screen in front of us, when you waved both of your hands that way. Your 1, 2, 3. The nice thing about your gestures is that you mixed one hand gestures with mirror gestures. I could see them, and then you put your hands away when they weren't needed. When we're back in live Toastmasters meetings, you're going to have to develop a set of skills for speaking in person. Right now, you've got a great set of skills for speaking over Zoom, and it's something that I can learn from as I watch you here. One thing that I did notice is that you had your notes down right underneath you, and you were not rooted to your notes in this speech. You didn't refer to them very often at all. So it was very noticeable when you had to look down, see your next point, and then continue. I'd recommend that since you had so few notes and weren't really that dependent on them, move them up underneath your camera on your computer. And that way you can just sort of blink down. I don't know if you noticed, I have my notes underneath the camera. And so it's very easy for me to refer to them without it being very obvious. And right along with your gestures, I really appreciated your vocal variety. I found it to be very appropriate to what you were saying. I appreciated the thoughtful way that you came across. There were times, though, that I found some of your pauses were not as effective as they could have been. It could have been that you were gathering your thoughts, and that is something that can be improved with more rehearsal of your speech, so that every line is as fluid as most of them were throughout. Sometimes the pauses were for effect. Sometimes you were gathering your thoughts, and when I can't tell the difference, that's when it diminishes the impact just a little bit. But the thing I liked best about your speech tonight was the definition of the difference between being thankful, which is when you receive more, versus being grateful, which is appreciating what you have. I'm 62 years old, and I'm just learning that particular lesson in my life. And to have you define it for me in a way I've never thought of before shows the power of Toastmasters, that I can come to a meeting like this, and even though I know everything because I'm old, I can learn something new because you bring a fresh perspective into the club. So thank you for that, Brittany. And that might be how I'd walk through that evaluation. And once again, to show you my page, and you can't read what I wrote mostly because I take shorthand, but all the things that I thought she did well visually, plus the thing about her notes, what I liked about her vocal variety, including specific things. You want to be able to say, not just, wow, what great gestures. What gestures did you like? I liked this one. I liked her counting. I liked when she talked about writing in her journal. By making a note about the specific things, then I'm able to give her real feedback as opposed to just saying, your gestures, wonderful. Your vocal variety, wonderful. So you want to be able to point to those specific things. And then the thing that I liked best, of course, was her, the fact that she taught me something new and taught me new definitions. So I wrote down the definitions she taught me so that I could refer back to them there. And that's the key. It's being specific about the feedback rather than using those general hyperbolic superlatives. That's the word I'm searching for. And I finally got there. So you want to try this again, Margaret?
Absolutely. Our next speaker is Carolyn Riley. Carolyn is doing her third speech in presentation mastery. And I did not get a title as far as I know. Carolyn was instrumental in starting our club. Carolyn, Joan, Max, Carol Blair. We are so grateful to these people for bringing Wetaskiwin, the Toastmasters Club, and we're looking forward to all that we can learn. I'm thrilled to introduce Carolyn Riley, DTM. Carolyn.
Thank you, Margaret. My speech title is What COVID Has Done For Me. And you need to know that I'm a great fan of Rex Murphy, who does commentaries on life in general. And if you have to take my speech tonight from that point of view. I don't know about you, but I have had it lately with the chaotic kerfluffle and jangle of the news, TV, print, and social media. A number of my friends have withdrawn from social media of late, declaring themselves overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information for and against every topic under the sun. And the virtual vehemence of people expressing their support or lack thereof on any given topic. Is coronavirus real or something cooked up in a CIA lab in China? To mask or not to mask, which has led to vaccinate or not to vaccinate, and in what particular order, if at all. To go out into public to acquire household supplies, taking our chances with the mask or not mask thing, or to play Amazon roulette on our front doorsteps with thieves and opportunists. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Does that apply to watching the evening news too? I tried playing ostrich for a while to give myself a break, reading my pile of unread books at home, mostly historical Regency romances or Scots history romances. But then my friends were freaking out all over the place. Someone trying to shoot the PM or the Governor General. Not that it mattered, they weren't home that weekend anyway, but he was a Canadian Ranger. Government trained and paid. Does this mean our special forces are too nice, too Canadian to advance on our capital with a hostile horde of howlies? Or do we need to review their strategic training to raise the professionalism of the up a few notches? Then there was the switch of power in the excited state. When you are a flea living next door to an elephant, you need to be aware of where the elephant is stomping because you don't want to be taken by surprise. The fear of the future, medically, mentally, and emotionally, has derailed a lot of us lately into our favorite areas of comfort: food, alcohol, or smokables. My challenge is that I quit smoking 33 years ago. I'm allergic to alcohol, and I'm a type 2 diabetic, and I have released 17 pounds since November the 1st. What I've been focusing on is getting 7 hours or better of sleep a night and making sure my blood sugar numbers are below 10, in the single digits. I've been as low as 3.7 lately, which is a whole new area of place for me to play. We said goodbye to my 95-year-old father-in-law in March, on the 13th. Later in the week, the COVID shutdown started, and we were profoundly grateful, as we had only had to wash our hands and sign our names at the hospice where he was staying. We shared the confusion of many families in the same boat. How can we possibly have a final farewell that honors our father and father-in-law, who had 8 kids, 24 grandkids, and many great-grandkids in 2 blended families? It was a moving target, as the rules changed almost daily for funerals, inside or out. As it turned out, my husband and I used our Toastmaster training to create an outdoor graveside service in Medicine Hat, where the family plot is. A grey granite Irish cross from Carrickfergus, Northern Ireland, the family home in the old country, marks the spot, and he was laid to rest beside his first wife, the children's mother. We shared an outdoor movable feast with about 30 members of the family, and it was amazing. That was the Friday of the long weekend in September. I will long remember the beautiful day, the peaceful view from the camp over the South Saskatchewan River, where Dad had shepherded the family goat herd in the dirty 30s. Since then, I assimilated our grief and farewell for Dad. We have lost a few other close ones. We have not been able to join in every family's grief that suffered a loss, so processing those transcendences has been a process. Funerals are not for the dead. They are about the dead, but they are for the living, to begin their grief processing. I've come to the realization that each of us walks this path alone, anyway, as grief builds on grief, and it all needs to be processed. So COVID has provided me with the thinking opportunities to talk on Zoom to friends in South Africa, Australia, and the US, and connect as well as one can on Zoom under COVID conditions. So I must say, I am grateful to COVID for the things it has provided me. Madam Toastmaster.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Now we turn the lectern back to Dennis Dawson, please.
Thank you. I'm also very grateful to COVID. Case in point, there is no way I would be able to do this workshop this evening were it not for COVID. And yet I find my dance card very full now doing presentations. As Margaret knows, I had dueling events tonight, and fortunately I chose the right one. So I'm happy I was able to do that. Yeah, so Carolyn, one of the things that jumps out at me right away is that your speech was very well written. And I'm always telling people, writing is the basis for Toastmasters. You can't really give a completely erudite speech if you're giving it off the top of your head. You can't give a great oration until you've edited it. And there is no such thing as a great writer, as we know. There are only great editors. I'm a professional writer, and I'm always telling people the only difference between my writing and anyone else's is 7 rewrites. It looks like everybody else's writing the first time through. So I really appreciate how well this was written. I like the flair that you put in there now and again with the hostile horde of Howleys and the dirty 30s. These little gems that you put in just sort of sparkle in the text. Now, in this particular speech, you were very note bound. You were, in fact, reading most of it through us. And so there were no gestures to speak of. And I'm going to mention that. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but it was noticeable as you did the presentation. You made a point of talking about Rex Murphy at the beginning. I don't know who Rex Murphy is. Maybe the rest of your audience does. And as a result, I thought, well, what am I missing here? And ultimately, I was missing nothing because it all came through in the speech that you gave. So watch out leading with your chin in a situation like that, allowing for a chance for somebody to criticize you when, if you had just delivered the speech, it would have been absolutely fine. One thing that was missing for me, though, I did not feel the emotion of the things that you were talking about. When you were talking about the death of your father-in-law, when you were talking about the Irish cross that was erected, it was sort of matter of fact. Now, on the one hand, we want to be careful never to talk about something in a Toastmasters speech until we have processed the emotion that goes with it. I cannot tell the story of the little match girl because when I get to the end of the story, and I'm thinking about it now, and I'm starting to tear up as I think of the end of the little match girl. I can't tell that story. And so, yes, we want to be sure that we've dealt with whatever emotions so they don't overcome us and prevent us from talking. That said, we do want to be able to tap back into the feeling and to present the genuine emotion and not give a representational speech at that point. But the most important thing I love about this speech was that it was a pathways lesson. And here I was talking about, oh, people who have been in the old program and they just won't move on, that sort of thing. Well, what I found is all the true DTMs, all of the distinguished Toastmasters who have been through the legacy program and are now working on the pathways program, see that it's very much the same and actually has some improvements over that past program. And by getting up and being a role model, as you've done tonight, you are doing a great service to everyone in this club and certainly to me. So thank you for your service, Carolyn. And back to you, Margaret.
Thank you, Dennis Dawson. I have blown smoke at the odd evaluation, I realize now, and I really appreciate your input. Now, I'm going to open it up for questions for about 10 minutes, if that's okay with you, Mr. Dawson.
That's certainly okay. I'm sorry that we've gone long.
Well, I just want people to have a chance to ask some questions if they have any. We're not long. Because
okay.
we did introductions, we're going to take a few minutes. Does anybody? John has a question.
Yes, Dennis, just for clarification for the audience, you mentioned when you were going to do your evaluations, you sort of prefaced it with the contest approach. But in a club setting, I know some people tend to game their evaluations in a contest where they might focus more on a lot more content to be beneficial to the evaluator, whereas in a contest, they might put in something that might be gaming towards the judging the criteria. So my question to you is, for these evaluations, are these what you would normally do evaluations, or are they more gamed towards contest type?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The real difference between a contest evaluation and the evaluation you give week to week is keeping in mind that you will have additional opportunities to give feedback to this speaker, and they'll have other people in the club give them feedback over a period of months. So you don't have to get everything into that one evaluation. Now, in a evaluation contest, you want to be sure you have plenty of meat in there. So great things that they did well, but some serious things that they could really improve upon. You don't want to come into a club evaluation and name everything that the person could improve upon week after week. If you saw that the last evaluation focused on their vocal variety and they made incremental improvements, you might talk about, oh, that's some improvement there, but don't dwell on that. Talk about something else that they could work on, one of the other things that you noticed in the past, so that they get a variety of feedback and you're not hammering them about the same things week after week. So yeah, you don't have to fit it all in, I guess, in a club evaluation the way you might in a contest.
Anyone else?
Dennis, thank you very much for your evaluation. And two things, one I want to give to you and one I want to ask of you. One is, please look up Rex Murphy. You are missing a great deal if you do not know who he is. Initially, he's from Newfoundland. So that should tell you a tale right there. But he's almost to the pundit stage. And I'm sure somewhere on YouTube or something, he's recorded, because he's hilarious. He's a very dry wit. And he's been the narrator of a lot of our lives. I thank you very much for the point about not putting forward an emotion until you've dealt with it, because that's where I erred on the side of not getting into it. I'm a famous crier from a way back, and it wouldn't take me much to get going on this. I dearly loved my father-in-law, and he was one of my very best friends. So I was working to not go there. And so now I know the next time I want to tell the story that I might word it differently, or I might find a different way of expressing the same feelings or the better feelings about that. And I would not have picked that up if you hadn't given me that evaluation. So thank you very much.
Happy to. And it's funny because you say he's from Newfoundland. So of course, you know what that means. Wink, wink. No idea. No concept.
Oh, they're hilarious.
But you know, it's funny because they'll bring movies over from Japan. The manga, my daughter really enjoys watching the animated films. And there are all kinds of characters in there that anybody in Japan would recognize that character and know immediately, oh, that's the imp. And I know that he's got these characteristics, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But here we see, oh, look, a funny little cartoon character. And the meaning of that character is entirely lost on an American audience. But it's all right because we just enjoy the cartoon character. So these cultural things don't necessarily translate, even when you go as to another country where we're separated by the same language.
Well said.
Thank you. Anyone else? Cheryl.
Hello, Dennis. Thank you for your speech tonight. It was very well done. I'll give you some feedback. No, just kidding. The one question I have, so you say to break your sheet up, you know, in your little lines here and so on. But when we're doing projects through Pathways, there are specific asks. So when you are doing your evaluation, do you address that specific ask first of what was required within the, within the speech presentation, or do you work it in the middle, or how do you kind of work that in? Because there's no use doing a project if we're not going to address the actual project.
Right. So you're definitely going to address those items in the written evaluation, right? So because it gives you the boxes and you'll go through. But in the oral evaluation, generally, yes, you'll want to say your task tonight was to work on your research. Well, let's talk about how many different sources you use to research your project, et cetera, along that line. Now, Carolyn's speech and I'm sorry, Brittany's speech, I think both of them were Pathways projects, but they were general speech projects. And they didn't have, they weren't a research project. They weren't a vocal variety project or something along that line. So in these two instances, I wasn't able to give the kind of feedback you're talking about. But yes, definitely if it's a project where they're supposed to do a particular thing, or you know, the next time Brittany gets an evaluation, hopefully it's someone who is in the presentation tonight. They'll say, well, Dennis told you to work on this, that, and the other. Let's see exactly how you did. And I didn't tell you to work on anything, did I? I just told you how wonderful you were, didn't I, Brittany? So the next time you get an evaluation, somebody better say, Dennis was right about how wonderful you are. That's right.
Thank you. We have Sandra Savage here, and she helped run the pilot, or Sandra, something about running and starting up Pathways, and she'd like to address this question as well. Sandra.
Thank you, Margaret. I just want to add one thing that I say to all of my mentees, and that is we're doing Toastmasters for ourselves. And just like Dennis referenced in the speech, we're doing it to learn how to practice speeches, not to give it Denny's, but someplace else. So I encourage my mentees to look at the project and figure out why they want to do it. Like, where is it going to get them? What are they going to achieve out of doing this towards something that's important in their lives? And if it isn't quite exactly the way the project is written, work with your VPE to make sure it's okay. But I just say, remember, this is about your growth, not about conforming to a program, getting an A or an F, or getting it done within the quarter. So I'm a little hippy dippy California girl, but that's what I say. I always just say, it's all about you.
Thank you, Sandra. And see, I have the attitude that I'm here to serve others and help others. And hopefully along that path, I will get better myself. So it just depends on your basic philosophy, I think it boils down to. Any other questions? We have about a minute and a half or 2 minutes.
There was a question from the floor. What happens if they really don't make the purpose or objectives of the speech? That's a really interesting question. And the answer is this. If someone gets up and they're supposed to do their icebreaker and they bark like a seal for 20 seconds, just like that, and sit down, what are you going to do? Well, everybody applauds. You get up and give them their evaluation. I can't believe that you wasted the club's time by getting up and barking like a seal for 20 seconds. How could you be so inconsiderate? Let me sign your evaluation. And they get credit for giving the speech. Why? Because we are a self-education organization. So you cannot fail at a Toastmasters project. You may not improve or learn your skills, and you may not benefit the club by speaking that way. But everybody gets credit. However, particularly I'm thinking of the old manual where you had the lesson getting comfortable with visual aids, and you'd have somebody come in and it wouldn't start and they can't get their computer set up and they fall all over themselves. They knock their sign off of the easel and then they say, ta-da. Well, you sign their book and you say, you know what? I would recommend that you do this lesson again. And have them do the speech again. Do it without credit, but this time do it for real and learn the lesson that they take from it. One thing that we don't want is a bunch of DTM where it's don't take much or don't time me. We want distinguished Toastmasters, and you only become a distinguished Toastmaster by sincerely doing your best at working the program every step of the way. Distinguished Toastmaster isn't a label you wear, it's a person you are. And everybody is a distinguished Toastmaster from the day they begin if they distinguish themselves by following the lessons the way they should.
Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you. Any other questions? I think we're almost done. And Wetaskiwin Toastmasters is famous for their chatting after. And if you'd like to chat with someone in the group and you want to go off with you and another couple people in a breakout room, just let us know. Carol Ashton, we will turn the meeting back to you. And I'm not